physical universe is energy, and it exists in various forms, depending on its level of vibration. You may have heard of the law of attraction, like attracts like, and our thoughts, words and actions are mirrored back to us through our experiences. Though there are other, less well-known universal laws, our focus in this video will be specifically on the 12 universal and spiritual laws of money and financial prosperity. The law of abundance. Abundance is our natural state, and noticing what we already have in our life enables us to receive even more. The opposite is also true. By only noticing what we don't have, we attract more scarcity. If we believe that we have to struggle to make money, then the way we'll receive it is by struggling to generate it. Yet if we truly believe that abundance is our natural state, our experiences will naturally lead to this. Let us shift our beliefs toward abundance, and expect to experience ease and flow. The law of attraction. Our thoughts, words and deeds are mirrored back to us through our experiences. What we focus on, expands. We attract into our life people and circumstances that are in alignment with what we radiate out into the world. Our experiences are affected by this law. When we think of positive things, we accelerate the process of having more positive experiences, particularly when we express gratitude for all the blessings we've already received. Once we understand this law and begin to notice what we're paying attention to, we'll be able to create and shape the experiences we want in all areas of our life, including prosperity. Another way to view this is that energy flows out of our body like a signal or airwave. We emit a precise signal, and only the same kind of wavelength will respond to it. There's no creation without action. While having clarity is key, we must support it by taking intentional actions and being awake to the right opportunities.
Kybalion is a Hermetic text that was first published in 1908. It is a study of the Hermetic philosophy of ancient Egypt and Greece and attributed to the three initiates, but the true authorship is unknown. The text presents the teachings of Hermeticism, which is a set of spiritual, philosophical, and mystical beliefs that originated in ancient Egypt and Greece. The Kybalion states that there are 7 principles of the universe, which are the principles of mentalism, correspondence, vibration, polarity, rhythm, cause and effect, and gender. These principles are said to govern all natural phenomena and can be understood and applied to achieve spiritual growth and understanding. The text also teaches about the nature of the universe, the human mind and consciousness, and the concept of Hermetic alchemy. Overall, the Kybalion is considered to be an important work within the Hermetic tradition and continues to be studied by those interested in spiritual and mystical teachings.
I'm reading an article on Christian Research Institute by Hank Hanegraaff. I have seen some strange behavior from him, but I'm still going to read this article. It's really good. He's the Bible Answer Man. This is an excerpt from Christianity in Crisis, 21st Century. Turning Truth into Mythology by Hank Hanegraaff. Before I read, I would also like to point out this is kind of a follow-up to the last video I did about Hermeticism, because I think that might be kind of where a lot of these ideas come from in the Word of Faith movement, like the law of attraction and stuff like that. Anyway, the following tale is a composite of the erroneous teachings of individuals such as Joel Osteen, Joyce Meyer, Creflo Dollar, Benny Hinn, Kenneth Copeland, Kenneth Hagin, Frederick Price, Miles Monroe, T.D. Jakes, Paula White, Juanita Bynum, John Hagee, and many others. While not all the faith teachers hold to every aspect of this tale, they have all made substantial contributions to both the production and proliferation of these aberrations and heresies. Once upon a time, long, long ago, on a faraway planet, there lived a god. This god was very much like you and me, a being who stands about 6'2" to 6'3", weighs a couple of 100 pounds, and has a handspan of about 9 inches. See my Robin Bullock video on that. This god's wisdom and power were so great that he literally had the ability to speak things into existence. In fact, this god could actually visualize beautiful images in his mind and then turn them into reality by utilizing a special power called the force of faith. One day, this god had a cosmic brainstorm. He decided to use the force of his faith to create something superb and special. He decided to bring a whole new world into existence. This was not going to be just any old world. It was going to be the most fantastic world imaginable. In fact, this world would become so wonderful that it would actually feature an exact duplicate of the mother planet where God lived. After carefully visualizing every detail of this wonderful, wonderful world, God went into action. Releasing the force of his faith like a whirlwind, God spoke into existence the planet he saw in his mind's eye. And boy, was God excited. Looking down with fondness on this classic new creation, he named it Planet Earth. And this was only the beginning. Suddenly, a host of brilliant new ideas began to flood into God's creative consciousness. He began to visualize vast oceans and springs abounding with water. He saw magnificent mountains and fertile fields. His mind produced flashes of thunder and lightning. Plants, flowers, and trees blazed in rapid succession through his thoughts. Now on a roll, God began to visualize life replete with beautiful birds and creatures of every size and shape imaginable. Yet this was merely the beginning, for after 5 days of vivid visualizations, God's mind moved on into yet another dimension. On day 6, his imagination went wild. In his mind's eye, God saw the crowning jewel of his creation. As the details developed within his fertile mind, God suddenly found himself focused on an exact duplicate of himself. Throwing all caution to the wind, God spoke, and suddenly out of the pristine soil of planet Earth there arose another God. A God spelled with a small g, but a God nonetheless. As the image of this little God took form, God saw that he had literally outdone himself. For there before his very own eyes stood another God, an exact duplicate of himself, including size and shape. God had finally done it. He had thought the unthinkable, and by his word of faith, God created a creature that was not even subordinate to himself. And boy, was God ever glad, for now he had a colleague whose nature was identical to his own, a God who could think like him and be like him and do almost but not quite everything he could do. God called his carbon copy Adam, and he gave him dominion and authority over the entire creation. As a matter of fact, this creature had so much power that his creator could do nothing in the earth realm without first obtaining his permission. Adam was truly a super being. He could fly like the birds and swim underwater like a fish. And that's not all. Without a spacesuit, Adam could literally fly through the universe. In fact, with just one thought, he could literally transport himself to the moon. Yet even after creating a super being like Adam, God was not fully satisfied with his accomplishments. Somehow he just knew that a piece of the puzzle was still missing. So putting his mind into overdrive, God began brainstorming once more. And then in a flash, it dawned on God. Why hadn't he thought of it before? Adam was made in his image, so obviously he was as much female as he was male, right? So why not double his pleasure and double his fun? Why not separate the male part from the female part? Not wanting to waste a single moment, God charged into action, causing a deep sleep to fall upon Adam. God opened him up, removed the female part from the male part, and made a being of surpassing beauty. He made woman, man with a womb. He called Eve the womb man. Eve. This time God had clearly gone too far. He had actually brought into existence the very beings that would one day get him kicked off the very planet he had created. As incredible as it may seem, these super beings would one day turn on their creator and relegate him to the status of the greatest failure of all time. You see, long before God had visualized planet Earth into existence, he had also created a whole other world full of beings called angels. One of these angels was a being of such breathtaking beauty and brilliance that he was named Lucifer, the morning star. Lucifer had great ambitions. In fact, he wanted to take control of everything God had ever visualized into existence. He wanted to become exactly like the Most High. Well, because of this treason, Lucifer was cast out of heaven and renamed Satan, the deceiver. Tumbling down from Mother Planet, where God lived, Satan landed on the replica that God had spoken into existence. He landed upon planet Earth. the very planet on which Adam and Eve would one day live. There he lay in wait for the opportunity of the ages, the opportunity to get back at God. And then one day opportunity came knocking. Not long after God had spoken Adam and Eve into existence, Satan spied them standing naked in the middle of the Garden of Eden. Satan instantly transformed himself into a serpent and cunningly tricked the two little gods into committing cosmic treason for just the price of an apple. Adam and Eve sold their godhood to Satan. The devil, through Adam, became the god. The devil, through Adam, became the god of this world. Alas, not only did Adam and Eve lose their nature as gods, but they were actually infused with the very nature of Satan himself. Adam had become the first person to be born again. He was born with the nature of God and born again with the nature of Satan. In one blinding instant, the first man and woman who had ever lived were transformed from divine to demonic. Immediately they became susceptible to sin, sickness, suffering, and more importantly, spiritual death. In fact, Eve's body, which like Adam's was originally made to give birth out of her side, underwent a radical transformation. From that moment on, she and her female offspring would bring forth children from the lower region of their anatomies. In that fateful moment, Adam and Eve were summarily barred from Eden, and God was banished from the earth. Satan now had legal rights to the earth and all her inhabitants, and God was left on the outside desperately searching for a way to get back in. God, in a flash, had become the greatest failure of all time. Not only had he lost his top-ranking angel, as well as at least a third of his other angels, but now in addition he had lost the first man he had ever created, the first woman he had created, and the whole earth and the fullness therein. But as they say in basketball, it ain't over till it's over. God was not ready to throw in the towel. He had that winning attitude and refused to let go. Realizing that he needed man's invitation to get back into the earth, God immediately went to work. After thousands of years, God finally found an old boy named Abraham, who took the bait and became the vehicle through which God, if he was lucky, may one day win back the universe he had lost. You see, through Abraham would eventually come a second Adam who would reverse the consequences of Satan's deception. This Adam, if all went according to plan, would return to man his godhood and to God his good earth. Well, in time, God got Abraham to strike a deal with him. In fact, God and Abraham became blood brothers and forged a covenant that would gain Abraham health and wealth and regain for God a foothold in the world he had created. God's plan was to make Abraham the father of all nations and to produce from his seed another Adam who would regain the turf that was lost by the first Adam. In keeping with his word, God made Abraham very, very wealthy. And then, once again, he proceeded to visualize, through God's mind, raised images of a brand new Adam, a man who would one day restore to him his rightful place in the universe, and who would forever banish his arch-rival Satan from the kingdom. And then it happened. One fine day, the image of this Savior coalesced in God's mind. Without hesitation, God began speaking into existence the picture of the Redeemer he had painted on the canvas of his consciousness. Excitedly, God positively confessed, "The Messiah is coming! The Messiah is coming!" As God's Spirit hovered over a little woman named Mary, the confession began to take shape before his very eyes. The spoken word became legs, arms, eyes, and hair, and then presto, there before God's very own eyes emerged the body of the second Adam. The second Adam was named Jesus, and as Abraham's descendant, Jesus was wealthy and prosperous. He lived in a big house, handled big money, and even wore designer clothes. In fact, Jesus was so wealthy, he actually needed a treasurer to keep track of all his money.
God has showed me several times what he actually means by the word wealth. Not what you think. Because the more you spend it for him, the more he's going to send it. Christ didn't actually live poor. He grew up in wealth, with wealth. He had wealth his whole life. So these people who try to say it's wrong to be rich, it's more holy to be poor, I don't think so. I saw some people's mansions in heaven. They were the size of New York City. One mansion. So he's not poor. And he's certainly not broke.
Now you can see it play out on the cross. When they took his raiment, he had 3 garments. Only the rich wore 3. It got quiet. It always gets quiet because everybody thinks Jesus just rode around on a donkey eating off the ground. He had 5 houses. Oh, I don't know if I believe that. I don't even care. He had 5 houses. Why else do you think Joseph could get up in the middle of the night, hire a whole caravan, and go to Egypt? He had the moolah to do it.
This is sick. This is sick. This is sick and disgusting. This whole thing is sick and disgusting.
Jesus, who was a whiz at speaking things into existence, showed his disciples how to master the art of positive confession. Thus, they too experienced unlimited health and unlimited wealth. The fact is that some of his followers caught on so well that they became rich beyond comprehension. The Apostle Paul, for example, had so much money that government officials would work feverishly to try to get a bribe out of him. Jesus also overcame every trick and temptation that Satan could throw his way, despite the fact that he never claimed to be God. Jesus succeeded in living a life of sinless perfection. When all was said and done, Jesus passed the test that the first Adam had failed. And then, in the prime of his life, Jesus entered a garden much like Eden, where the first Adam had lost his godhood. In this garden, called Gethsemane, Jesus moved into the final stages of a process that would transform him from an immortal man to a satanic being, and would in turn recreate men as little gods, who would no longer be subject to the scourge of sin, sickness, and suffering. As part of the process, Jesus would have to die a double death on the cross. He would have to die spiritually as well as physically. If physical death had been enough, the 2 thieves on the cross could have atoned for the sins of mankind. No, the real key was spiritual death and suffering in hell. And then one day, upon a cruel cross, the crystal Christ, the paragon of virtue, was transformed into a defiled demoniac. The Lamb became a serpent and was ushered into the very bowels of the earth. There Christ was tortured by Satan and his minions, and all hell laughed. Little did Satan know, however, that the last laugh would be on him, for just as Adam had fallen for Satan's trap in Eden, now Satan had fallen for God's trap in hell. You see, Satan had blown it on a technicality. He had dragged Jesus into hell illegally. The truth is that Satan had completely forgotten to take into consideration the fact that Jesus had not actually sinned. You see, Jesus had merely become sin as a result of the sin of others. Also, Satan and his demonic hosts had tortured the emaciated, poured out little wormy spirit of Christ, without legal rights. Pause. You will see these are all based on quotes by real people that said these things. Just so you know. All this was exactly the opening God had been looking for. So seizing the moment, God spoke his faith-filled words into the bowels of the earth. Suddenly, the twisted, death-racked spirit of Jesus began to fill out and come back to life. He began to look like something the devil had never seen before. There, in the sinister presence of the evil one himself, Jesus began to flex his spiritual muscles. As a horde of whimpering demons looked on, Jesus whipped the devil in his own backyard. He snatched Satan's keys and emerged from hell as a born-again man. God had pulled off the coup of the ages. Not only had he tricked Satan out of his lordship using Jesus as the bait, but he also caught Satan on a technicality through which Jesus could be born again. But that's not all, you see, because Jesus was recreated from a satanic being into an incarnation of God. You too, dear reader, can become an incarnation. As much an incarnation as Jesus Christ of Nazareth, and as an incarnation of God, you have unlimited health and unlimited wealth, a palace like the Taj Mahal with a Rolls Royce in your driveway. And if I could shock you, maybe I should. You, my friend, are a little messiah running around on earth. All it takes now is to recognize your own divinity. You too can harness the force of faith. Never again will you have to pray, thy will be done. Rather, your word is God's command. By simply using your tongue, you can literally speak whatsoever you desire into existence. And then you can live happily ever after on this planet of prosperity. The end. Wow. Yeah, this is Word of Faith teaching, and it's kind of gnarly. And I'm just going to link this below, because in the footnotes there are like 50 some, maybe 60 quotes that he used to make this mythology. And you can see when you put it all together just how ridiculous it is. It really is ridiculous. And I'm thinking that all these things are based on Hermeticism and, Kabbalah, all that. Going back to the most ancient sources of false religion, of satanic false religion, with the law of attraction. I'm gonna put a little clip from a Melissa Dougherty video, just a little clip, and I will link the whole video below, because it's all about the occult roots of the Word of Faith movement and the law of attraction, and you should watch it. It's really, really good. Thank you.
This is from the book The Secret on page 164. You are God in a physical body. That's a capital Y and capital G. You are the creator, and you are creating the creation of you on this planet. I'm sorry, this is garbage. Really, guys, ye will be like God sounds more like a slimy serpent to me. Now that we went over all of that, this brings me to the actual part of the video that might cause some controversy. I submit to you that Word of Faith prosperity preaching is a type of Christianized law of attraction. Hear me out. Come along with me on this fun little breadcrumb trail. First stop is the 1800s with a very important man named Phineas Quimby. Though I would say his teachings of self-divinity have been around since the dawn of mankind, Phineas Quimby is dubbed the father of New Thought teachings. New Thought was also considered a type of higher thought and leaned on many metaphysical and occultic techniques to get results. The law of attraction was one of them, though Quimby wasn't the one who called it that. It was actually a woman named Helena Blavatsky.
And now it stands proven that Satan, or the red fiery dragon, the Lord of Phosphorus, and Lucifer, or light-bearer, is in us. It is our mind. Helena Petrovna Blavatsky.
She's credited with calling it the law of attraction. Now, I am getting to something here, but that brief background was necessary to share what my actual concerns are about the Word of Faith prosperity preaching that we see today. That I submit to you that, in my opinion, the teachings of Word of Faith and prosperity preachers are closer to the doctrine of demons than they are of the Bible. Yeah, ouch, right?
Run.
There's just one name that can keep you out of hell, and it's the name of Jesus. The name of Jesus.